We're talking with Onyx Art Group member Penny A. Shaw. Welcome, Penny.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and your artistic journey.
I have been a lifelong artist. From the age of 2 or 3 years old, I have been dabbling in an art in some capacity. Uh, Formally trained all the way through graduate school with many different mediums, exploration of many different mediums, uh, and just finding my way, as an artist, trying to be the better artist that I could possibly be. Whether it was doing realistic, when I was in undergraduate school, I worked with more with social realism and things that was happening in the world during the latter part of the 60s, from Biafra to the riots to all of that was incorporated into my artwork.
Okay, great. What message do you want your work to convey about your journey?
I think more than anything else, the evolving of man
Okay.
and an evolving of myself as an artist, whether it was working with realism or abstraction. Uh, After retiring, I've realized that I wanted to continue with my art journey, but I didn't want to do the traditional things that I would have been doing prior to. I had experimented with doing glass blowing and with doing glass slumping, and found that it was taking too much of my time, and I wanted something different. And so I started looking on the internet, like most of us, surfing the internet, and ran across the technique of doing pour painting. I had worked my way through undergraduate school as a watercolorist, but as I evolved with the watercoloring, I realized that that was not the niche that I wanted to stay in. Um, I experimented with doing all kinds of crafts, and as an art educator, I taught all kinds of crafts from AP to regular classes, just so that the students could have an experiment of feeling themselves grow. But then when I retired and it came time for me to make decisions about my own work, life work, I realized that I wasn't happy with the traditional type artwork. I wanted to do something different. And when I saw the technique of pouring, I started experimenting with the pour painting of dilutions and adding colors and just having a lot of fun just with mixing colors. Then that got to be kind of boring. And as it became boring, I decided that looking at the paintings and turning the paintings multiple different ways was not enough for me. And I started embellishing, whereby I would take the painting, the pour painting, let it dry, and I would come back in and I would draw on top of the surface to create different em- 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 emphasis on something that I want people to be able to see. And the more embellishing I did, I realized that I had more control over the paint than just doing the pour and then come back and embellishing. That I could actually pour the painting in certain ways to get the images that I wanted.
Okay. Can you tell us about any particular artists that have influenced your work?
I am a fond lover of Jacob Lawrence, but more than anything else, I love me some Sam Gillian, with how he had managed to take canvases off of the off of those stretchers and just add color all over to his paintings. and that the paintings did not have to hang on a wooden stretcher, that they could actually hang just by themselves from the ceiling, on the walls, in any kind of way.
All right. Can you tell us about the painting that you brought to share with us today?
The one behind me is called A Mule and a Broke Plow. Um, the colors are symbolic of looking at the African diaspora colors of yellow, reds, and blacks. But more than anything else, when you look at it, it also is a symbolism of the promises that was made to African Americans at the time of the Civil War, of a mule and a plow and acres of land, and not realizing. So the plow that you see in the image is broken because of the broken promises that was made.
Okay. Where do you hope your art carries you in the future?
I want name recognition more than anything else. It's not about selling. It's about selling, but it's not about selling. It's about name recognition in such a way that people hear it and they recognize the artwork to go along with the name. We're with Anna Gatling, who is with Onyx Art Group. She's going to tell us a little bit about her artistic journey.
My artistic journey started in school when I was in boarding school in England. I was an artist from the sense that anything that was artistic, I was there. Moving forward to coming to the United States, I went to a college to do art, but found out that I actually did not like art in college. And after my first semester, I was mentally done with art and could not basically understand what was going on. So I decided I was going to go into theater. So basically another artistic outlet. So I graduated from college doing theater and minoring in African American history. Did theater in New York for a few years and finally moved into this area, into Virginia. And at this point, I was married with children, and I stopped doing art because I cannot do art and raise kids at the same time. Just for me, it was not going to happen. I needed to focus. So I would say probably about 30 some odd years later, during the pandemic struck, and I had the epiphany that I should go back to doing art because my kids were now out of the house and I was home alone. And so I went and visited Michael's and came out with all kinds of art supplies. I didn't know where I was going with it, but I figured we were going to be in lockdown. Nobody knew how long we were going to be stuck at home for. So I got everything I could possibly need to paint. Started out with watercolor, which was basically going back to my first love. And, I painted for, I think, the first year in watercolor. And watercolor being what it is, it requires layers and layers and layers of watercolor paint. And I like realism. So that was a level of mental gymnastics for me. Even though I love it, it was extremely time consuming. So at some point I decided I was going to take a mental break from watercolor. And I went in, I was looking around the internet and I saw people doing this thing called fluid art. And I thought, try that. The problem was I didn't think I was an abstract artist. I was a fine artist, not an abstract artist. So I tried fluid art. My first was a major fail, but I still have it on my wall in my studio because it reminded me of where I've been. So it's a beautiful piece that I would probably not give away because it's just about my journey. So I continued to experiment with fluid art and actually I absolutely enjoyed the process. So I continued my journey with fluid art and also painting realism in acrylic. I'm no longer doing watercolor, even though I love to do watercolor. I don't dabble in watercolor at this time because it's paper. I need my art on canvas. So
Do you have messages that you tend to incorporate into your artwork?
I normally don't. I did do a piece a few years ago that sold. It was called Cotton and Chain for um, the open space art in Woodbridge. And that piece sold. I have no idea where it is. I know that it probably left the United States, but a young lady's bought the piece. Um, Normally, I don't really have themes. Um, any kind of message to my painting, but every once in a while, I feel compelled to do that. Um, and if I feel compelled to do something like that, I will. But for most part, I paint flowers. I'm a nature person at heart, so I like to paint flowers.
Okay. You have behind you one of your images. Can you tell us about it, please?
Sure. This image is started out as an acrylic pour, and initially when I painted this, I looked at it and couldn't quite make out if I liked it or not. So it kind of lived with me for a while. I kept, I walked past it, months later, I would look at it again, and I wasn't quite feeling it at the time, and I kept it in the background. So one day I looked at it and decided to start embellishing. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I just decided to just go for it, and hopefully I wouldn't, mess up the painting. I did embellish. I started with the lattice woven piece in the middle of the painting, and then for some reason I chose to separate it. I just decided I wanted separation because it still wasn't talking to me. I like my paintings have to speak to me before I stop. So it wasn't time to stop. So I decided to give it, a gold border. And once I started, I thought I totally ruined the painting because it looked weird. So I forced myself to keep going. And that is something that I find in all of my paintings. You get to that ugly stage and you think you're done, you've ruined your painting. Just make sure you keep going. Don't give up, because the actual painting will eventually emerge. So this eventually emerged for me, and I actually like it. I won't say that this is something that I am emotionally, stuck to. I try not to be emotionally stuck to any of my paintings, because if somebody buys it, then I'll be a mental wreck. However, as far as that's concerned, my watercolor I cannot sell, but my acrylic paintings I will sell. So my watercolor are things that I keep for my family.
Do you mentioned that you like to do realism?
Yes.
Is realism the favorite forte of your, or do you prefer it to be, since you've been doing the pour painting, have you gotten more into relaxing with the realism versus doing the pour fluid painting?
I think that realism for me takes a lot out of me. So if I want to relax, I will pour. If I have time to just focus, just totally just throw myself into something, if I have the time, then I will focus on my realism, because it takes more out of me than doing a pour. A pour relaxes me, and because I mean, coming up with different color schemes, that is relaxing. When you're trying to make something look real, that takes a lot of energy. And so I tend to do more. Now that I've discovered abstract, it's not just fours, but there are other forms of abstract. I'm willing to do that. The adult me is willing to do that. And I think maybe that's what they were trying to teach me in college, that my brain was not developed enough to handle that at 18. So as an adult now, I am ready to explore, and I'm not rigid. As a teenager, I was very rigid. Now I think I'm willing to let go of a lot of things and just experiment.
Okay.
So yeah.
Are there any other ideas that you would like to share with us about your journey?
Like my fellow artists, my journey is evolving. It has evolved since I've started. I glean from a lot of places, a lot of artists. So I think that my journey has literally just began, because there's a whole lifetime ahead of me to experiment.
Hello, we're here talking with Otis L. Stanley, one of the artists and members of Onyx Art Group. Otis, would you do us a favor and tell us a little bit about your artistic journey?
Yes, glad to be here to talk to you about that. As mentioned, my name is Otis L. Stanley. I'm originally from Richmond. My father was an artist. He painted, so I kind of grew up around turpentine and paintbrushes. And over the years, I've been able to continue that journey and expand.
When you are painting, what message do you want to convey in your work?
Well, a lot of my subjects are of African Americans. And I was recently told that a lot of my work brings back memories to those who view it. So I appreciate that angle of it, to bring back memories of days gone by. So that's the angle I bring to it. Just create memories and thoughts of past experiences of the viewer.
Okay. Would you say that your work convey a certain time period?
Not necessarily. Quite often I'll see a photograph that's flashed upon the screen and it's there and gone in an instant. And with several of my paintings, I concentrate on that image to give the viewer a little more time to process it. So it could be something contemporary, it could be something in the past. But by creating an image from that snapshot, it gives the viewer a little more time to process it.
Do you paint with a lot of color?
From time to time, I've done several chromatic paintings, and when the spirit moves me, I'll add other colors as well. It's just when the spirit moves me, that's how I go by. So I don't go into a painting with a plan per se. It depends on what the subject matter is, and if I think the painting needs color, I will add color to it.
Of all the paintings that you've done, is there one particular one that you have found that you find the most enjoyment and you do not want to relinquish it to a buyer?
Well, I have a painting that I created. It's entitled Peas and Peppers. And it's a concentration showing hands with peas and peppers in the young lady's lap, and she's shelling peas. And that's in my personal collection. You can't leave the house. So that's one that I really like and appreciate.
What is the sentiment behind that particular painting to you?
It brings back childhood memories of shelling peas with my grandmother. And I think a lot of people in my age group can relate to that.
In your painting, and as you paint, do you paint with a lot of texture, or do you usually paint flat? Is there a...
Yeah, I usually paint flat. I don't put a lot of texture in my work.
Would you say that you're, is there a specific painter that you would say that you have championed because of the wood styles that you use?
Well, one of my heroes is Jacob Lawrence, and I've done a tribute painting to Jacob Lawrence. I've also done a tribute painting to Jonathan Green, who's an internationally known Gullah painter from Charleston, South Carolina, as well as I did a painting that I dedicated to William H. Johnson, and I put elements of their styles in each of the paintings that I did.
Is there anything else you would like to share with us about your work and your journey that you've been on with your artistic journey?
Yeah, I would invite the viewers to Google my name, Otis L. Stanley, to see my work. Unfortunately, I didn't bring it here today, but please Google my name, Otis L. Stanley. You get the opportunity to see a lot of my work online.
Thank you.
Thank you.